Yeah.
But I'm of the opinion that no blurred is better, simply because it's a little bit more honest, I would say,
Yes.
and a little bit
Yes.
more authentic. Because sometimes you don't know what's going on when it's like,
Well, exactly.
like, are they actually paying attention or whatever, and so on.
Exactly. So do I need to just tap to unmute my sound? I think it's saying here now.
Oh yeah, tap to unmute. And you should be live already, Charlotte. So wonderful
Ah,
to see you, and wonderful to see everyone here. Welcome everybody to Brainfood Live on Air. It is episode 278, and I'm super excited today because it is a special. It's a Brainfood Live on Tour special. I'm dialing in from wonderful and sunny Dubai, where I'll be having a bunch of conversations with recruitment personalities here for the next couple of days, particularly in a huge event tomorrow, which I'm very excited about, curated and managed by my co-host today, Charlotte Turner. So, Charlotte, firstly, thank you for dropping in and helping me with this conversation. Might be worthwhile for you to just describe quickly who you are and what it is you do, and what's happening tomorrow.
sure, absolutely. Well, firstly, Hung, assalamu alaikum, and welcome to the UAE. It's an absolute pleasure to welcome you here. And I know most of the RL, or all of the RL Middle East community will agree with me there. So yes, my name is Charlotte Turner. I'm the head of marketing and communications at RL 100 Middle East, which is part of the recruitment events company, the giant behind Recvest UK, US, and of course the RL 100 brand globally in the UK, the Middle East, and now America. So I've been here in the region for 10 years, and I'm extremely proud to call the UAE home. I think that every single morning when I wake up. And yeah, we've got our fantastic event tomorrow with over 45 TA change makers and leaders in the region. So we're really very excited. And this podcast, Hung, is just a great way to kick off what's going to be a fantastic 48 hours. So we're really looking forward to it.
It is. I'm very excited. I'm going to update my talk as well. I'm like last minute. I'm going to keep improving it. So I've got some more stuff to do, and it's going to be excellent. So what wonderful to see you guys here. Wonderful to see that community starting to gel here in the Middle East. It's going to be fantastic. Quickly, Tim. Yes, I did forget to tell you I'm in Dubai. If you're here, let me know. I might have some. Basically, I'm here till Sunday, I think. So I have some time. Potentially, we can catch up. Okay, cool. Charlotte, we got to firstly, let's do some sound checks, folks. I want to make sure everyone can hear me okay. I think everyone can hear me on Crowdcast, seeing as people have commented on this. But we are live streaming on multiple live streams, also on LinkedIn. So if you're watching this on LinkedIn, on my LinkedIn, do let me know in comments whether you can hear me okay. I think you should also be watching this from Javid's LinkedIn, and I think Miriam's LinkedIn as well. So if you're watching it from those places, let us know in the comments whether you can hear and see us okay. I think we're okay. We should be able to roll on. Okay, cool. Charlotte, let's I tell you what, let's get straight into it and start bringing in some of our guests. I think actually no, before we do that, I want you to give me your verdict, because you're one of these people that, of course, has had experience in multiple cultures. You've come to the Middle East and you've been here now a long time. So you've got one of these like unique perspectives in the sense you've got foot in either side. It'd be wonderful to get your view as to, what you think are the major recruitment issues in sort of UAE and the Gulf states. Like, what are the big challenges that recruitment professionals and employers have to tackle? And what have you discovered yourself as a professional coming here? How would you sort of commentate on those things?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, and when our esteemed colleagues join us, they will be able to deep dive into this more than I will. But however, certainly since working with them for the last kind of 18 months, 2 years, I think Emiratization, localization, Saudization is an ongoing challenge in the region, and something that has to be worked on and changed and has to remain very agile. So that's kind of one of the main changes. And of course, the introduction of AI is always a subject that comes up repeatedly on how that can enhance and add to TA functionalities. I think in the region, certainly my experience of being here is I think sometimes there can be a perception, and I'm sure there will be comments coming in on this, but there can be a perception sometimes that the Middle East can maybe not be as far forward as other areas, and that's certainly not the experience that I've found. We have some amazing initiatives, visions from the governments across multiple areas in the Middle East, the most recent being Vision 2033 in Dubai. And in my experience, I always see that people are at the heart of those visions, and they're driven forward to encourage people to stay for longer, to see the Middle East as not just a great place to live, but a great place to work and progress your career. So that's something that really comes across to me on a regular basis. That, you know, with the kind of the backing of these kind of government initiatives, you know, things change and are updated constantly. So yeah, it's fast. It's a fast-paced region to live in. Everything is very kind of yalla. We've got to get on with it. We've got to do this. We've got to be the change makers, and we've got to be the best that we can possibly be. And that's very obvious to me in the Middle East.
What was hardest for you, Miriam, Charlotte, sorry, when you came into the sort of the region for the first time? Like, what can you remember sort of the things that you struggle with in the first sort of year or so that you're over here?
To be honest, I didn't really struggle because I found it one of the most welcoming places, and I'm lucky to be quite well travelled. But you know, and I spent 20 years in London, so which is obviously a melting pot of culture, of amazing cultures and experiences. But the Middle East, I think, if you're moving here, again, in my opinion, if you're moving here as an expatriate, you need to, if you open your heart to the culture and the differences within the Middle East, then it gives back tenfold. So to learn about those different cultures, I mean, one of the things that I did when I moved here, and Zahir will probably be chuckling when I say this, and if Shireen's on the call, she will be too, but I started taking Arabic lessons, which is not easy. It is not an easy language as an English person to learn. But again, it kind of, you know, when I speak a little tiny bit of very badly pronounced Arabic, it goes a long way. And I think if you embrace a culture and you really kind of want to learn about it, then in the Middle East, in my experience, you're accepted very, very quickly and welcomed with open arms.
Yeah, it sounds obvious, doesn't it? But it's probably amazing that it has to be repeated. You have to engage local language, local culture as much as you can, even though it's very comfortable sometimes. And that's a certain privilege of sort of an Anglophone type of background, is that, you know, you can get away with not learning other languages, but in fact, just the gesture of doing so is important. But I also think just listening to the sounds and getting into the mode of thought actually is a very good way to change your own sort of mindset, which is something you have to do when you're coming to a new region, rather than just, you know, bringing your own sort of value set over here. So yeah, very, very interesting indeed to hear that.
And I haven't seen it anywhere else in the world, you know, and the UAE really is a melting pot of different cultures, and the majority of us are away from home. So, you know, it's great to embrace things like the Indian festivals. Diwali's coming up, obviously, which is a fantastic time to be here. And obviously during the holy month of Ramadan, it's amazing to be involved with that. So it really is an incredible place to learn and embrace new culture, 100%.
Yeah, fantastic stuff. Let's bring on some of our guests. Charlotte, you're going to help us have a conversation with all of these wonderful folks. So I'm going to just bring everyone in together and see how we can crash everyone in one place. So we're going to bring on Javeed. That should be an invite there. I think Miriam, let's get you on also. We had Matt here, didn't we? Let's see if I can find
I think Matt's on. I saw Matt popping up in the chat earlier.
Let me see if I can grab it. I think Matt is just Matt here, isn't he? So let's just get Matt in, and we've got Zahir as well. Let me just see if I can find her. Javeed, wonderful to see you, sir. Whilst wonderful to meet you, I look forward to doing that properly tomorrow. But whilst we have you here, Javeed, why don't you quickly introduce yourself? Who are you? What it is you do?
Oh, welcome to Dubai, first of all. So, salam alaikum, everybody. I hope everybody's doing well. I see a lot of people joining in from UK and from the Middle East. So, good morning and good afternoon. I'm Javed Khan. I'm a director of talent acquisition at KPMG. Hung, I must say, this is a fanboy moment. I have seen so much of your content. I have butterflies in my tummy. I've never felt it like this. I told Matt this last night, right? So, I'm so excited to go after this. Let's see what we got.
Yeah, fantastic. Let me tell you, I need to set your expectations, Javeed. You're about to get you're about to be disappointed over the next 30 minutes or so. My pleasure to meet you for sure. We have Miriam here as well, Miriam Dimitriou. Miriam, why don't you quickly introduce yourself? Who are you? What it is you do?
Hi everyone, and I'm flattered to be here today, honestly, Lee. So I am the head of talent acquisition, talent management, and organization design for GCGRA, which is the Commercial Gaming Regulatory Authority. I've been in the Gulf region for 24 years. I'm not that old, but and in the Middle East region most of my life. And I worked 10 years in Kuwait and 14 years in Dubai. I have experience across all the Gulf region. I did the opening of Saudi Arabia, Omanization, Saudization, Emiratization, and I really enjoy my journey here.
Fantastic stuff. Wonderful to see you. Welcome, Miriam. We have Matt here as well. Matt, great to see you, sir. Can you quickly introduce yourself, who you, what it is you do?
Yeah, pleasure to be here. Great to be on the podcast, and good morning, good afternoon to everybody wherever you are in the world. I'm Matt Hesketh. I'm regional head of talent acquisition for HSBC. I've been in the region since 2009. I did a couple of years in Oman before moving up to the UAE, and I've been here since, working across aviation and banking.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Zahir, I've invited you onto the stage, but I'm not sure whether you can see that again. I'm going to try again. So just invite and then just accept the pop-up that comes on. But let me know in the chat if you're struggling with that, and we'll find some other way to fix. Anyway, let's get on with it. Wonderful to see everyone here. I've heard the word emiratization a couple of times already. Let's dive straight into that. For people outside, they may not have no clue what this is. So let's treat everyone as if they're coming from it at first, sort of completely fresh. What is it? Can someone define that for us? And what does it mean from a recruitment perspective? Anybody want to give this a shot?
Yeah, of course. I mean, emiratization is like Saudization or Omanization. It's just to give percentage of hiring to the organization of the local nationals. And of course, the toughest is the UAE national, because we are 11 million in UAE living, and we have 1.1 UAE national only. So there is a big competition on who to hire first, the Emirati. So this is where the Emiratization is coming from. And it depends on which industry, the percentage of UAE national that you have to hire. Previously, it was mainly for the government entity. However, also now, and like a couple of years before, it was introduced to the also private sector. So this is just quick, what is emiratization?
I think that was a succinct and comprehensive description I've ever heard. That was amazing. Thank you very much, Miriam. So as I understand it, basically what the government, and it seems every government in the region has a policy similar to this, right? You mentioned Omanization, Saudi Arabization as well. So every sort of a regional entity wants to basically create a situation where local nationals are full participants in the economic system, and it's a huge challenge sometimes because we have a big disparation of population. I didn't actually realize that there was in the UAE, the vast majority of people living here, it seems, are not actually nationals. So we have, did you say 11 million living in the region,
yes.
in the country, and only 1.8, 2 million or so are actually native citizens. So the rest are going to be expats, immigrants, different workers who've come here to work, but we need to be hiring that 2 million also, and that's the competition difficulty for it. Really, really interesting. Exactly. Okay, we have Zahir on screen. Thank you for joining us, Zahir. Wonderful to see you. Why don't we just round off the introductions there as well? Can you quickly introduce yourself? Who are you? What it is you do?
My name is Zahia Abu Ali. Thank you for adding me. Sorry, I was facing some challenges just to accept the ad. I am in the region. I am from the region. I am from the Middle East, and I am in the UAE since 27, so almost 18 years now. And I have 20 plus years of experience in the HR, different verticals. But lastly, I landed as head of talent acquisition and talent management in Emirates Islamic Bank in Dubai. I am so excited to be part of this episode, and I'm so excited to have some of the powerful thoughts of my colleagues, Matt, Mariam, Javid. I will see them tomorrow, inshallah, also in the RL 100. And Charlotte, it's always nice to see you. Hungly, I am so excited. And Javid said he has butterflies, and I have birds in my stomach.
Oh my goodness. I'm feel very blessed to hear all this, and I'm very I'm very glad to have this conversation. Okay, Tom, Emiratisation, really interesting challenge. There is competition for this talent. Typically, when that happens, I call it abundance mindset from the candidates, in the sense that they basically know they're in demand. Therefore, they become extremely selective in terms of what they decide to pursue. All the stuff that recruiters be familiar with. They're going to be difficult to contact. They drop out of process. They're going to negotiate half the salary. They're going to say yes to the job, and then suddenly yes, so they've got a counter offer or a better offer somewhere else. All of these things are happening. How do you the TA folks try to counteract that? Like, what is the technique? Is it employer branding, for instance, is a big thing here? Or is it more a case of you've got to spend a lot of time per candidates? Like, what is the techniques that you have developed to try and, improve your ability to hire the local talent here? Any thoughts on this? Matt, let's go with you first.
I don't think it's too different to any other sort of strand of diversity and inclusion, where a combination of factors, so not one silver bullet, but I think a combination of definitely having the right EVP. They are selective, so having the employer brand that really sings to what it is that they're interested in. And then for all the interventions by AI, I think the most effective method is, traditional sort of recruitment, of getting out into the market, connecting with them, surfacing some of the talent. The CVs often don't tell the whole story, so it's important you take the time to go out there, make friends before you need them, I suppose. Try and get ahead of demand from the business, so that talent can surface as and when the jobs come up, and you can go and introduce the Emiratis to the business. So, I think the market has become better at adapting to this. The days of running a job advert, keeping your fingers crossed and waiting for some magic to happen is probably a little bit dead and buried. And across now government and private sector, I think most organizations are pretty sophisticated in how they ring fence that Emirati talent, how they align their EVB to engage with it, and then going out there and getting it. And one thing that's quite common practice to us, where I think the UAE probably is where it is a bit ahead of the market, is that we've not labeled it as such, but we've doing skills-based hiring for Emiratis or for Saudis or for Omanis or for Kuwaitis for years, just because the supply isn't there. So you've really got to think about, okay, if we can't find in HSBC a project finance person with skills X, Y, and Z, what's the next best alternative? Let's go and have a look in aviation. Let's go and have a look in telco. Let's have a look somewhere else and start to mine the pockets where that talent does exist.
Yeah, really interesting. Let's not forget, folks, skills-based hiring kind of emerged in the pre-COVID era. It was about trying to open up the funnel at the top of the funnel to get more talent in. And I know the world has changed somewhat over the last couple of years, of course, and we get a slightly different sort of perspective now, but that's when skills-based hiring emerged. It was an attempt to basically get away from credentialization, and a really interesting insight from you on that, Matt, as well. What about language, everybody? I mean, does it make sense to recruit Emiratis purely using Arabic and doing it this way, on the presumption that that's the default language, or is it done by English or another language? Like, how does it work that way? Anybody want to sort of answer that?
I think it goes with the sector that you are hiring in. So like in the financial sector, the language used for communication is English. So it does not make sense just to hire somebody who is not able to use English. But if you are hired in the government sector, the communication is done in Arabic. So yes, they will take somebody who is only Arabic speaker and is not very good in English speaking.
Okay, brilliant, Zahir. I hope folks are making notes on this straight away. We're getting some really good information. So I didn't know, for instance, the government was and financial sector actually the day operational use of language may be different. So straight away as a recruiter, you've got to think along. Okay, what is the organization you're recruiting for? Whether you're an agent or in-house, that has a determination factor. Okay, really, really good. Sorry, is there someone else want to come in there? And no, by the way, if you do, just pop in. Don't hesitate to interrupt me.
No, I just wanted to say the language
I'll
is.
come in with an anecdotal story on that, actually. So I think that the common language is English in terms of business. And a lesson I learned from Miriam when we used to work together a few years ago. I joined one of the local banks. Miriam and I were partnering up. And I was trying to drive an EVP, and I was using quite nice English. And she took me to one side and said, "You know, we don't need you in your Harry Potter English. Can you simplify it, please?" And absolutely correct. You know, so we amended an EVP to make the English, you know, appropriate for. And she's quite right, to a community of people who mostly have English as a second or even a third language. When you think about the broader demographics of the region, so primarily English, but I think it's extremely helpful if you know, sort of try and leave out the Shakespearean element of it and make it as simple and easy for everybody to understand.
You're just too eloquent for your own for your own good, Matt. It seems.
I mean, that's it, right?
I've learned a lot from him, the English.
Look, really good point though. Like, what is the kind of English language literacy amongst the local population? That's got to be something you got to think about, because that obviously changes your communication style, and you know, whether things land or not. So really, really interesting. And by the way, to be honest with you, it's also like best practice anyway. Like the way in which you meant to communicate is to make it very, very accessible, even if you are native English, and having, you know, overly verbosity is not a good thing. Okay, Javid, you are going to come in with some commentary there as well.
Absolutely. And I just wanted to add up on everything the folks have said, right? I mean, if you look at it, when I came here in 2012, I gave it a first shot of Emiratization in 2013-14. I hired 7 Emiratis and they lasted about a week and they left. So the work with the government actually started much, much ahead. They started an upshare program wherein there was a think tank. When we went back to the government and said, you know what, we got to start training them because they only think public sector and working for the government, you need to tell them what private sector is. Now, if somebody coming from professional services, they didn't know what KPMG was. So we actually had to start about telling them what KPMG is, what professional services is, what consulting is, and so on and so forth. That's where we started with Emiratization. The strategy is grow them. Matt, I know, is actually looking at graduates who are not yet graduated. I look at graduates who are just coming out of the industry, but the Ministry of Human Resources is bringing in a lot of support to help us in the private sector to get the Emiratization sorted out, right? They started with 2% and they gave us a time to get to 10%, I think about 7-10 years, right? But while Saudi said 50% 5 years back, right? So there's goodness in most of it, but and also to add, the graduates go to some amazing universities and they go to some very high universities. So the English speaking is amazing. Yes, the inner circle of public sector is Arabic speaking, so they prefer the Arabic speaking. But there are some consultants who are doing some amazing projects in private sector and all of that. So that's my comments on the nationalization side.
Okay, really good. I mean, staying on the language just a little bit. So it's pretty obvious to me, people watching this, by the way, Dubai, very attractive place. I'm looking at some amazing, attractive things right now. Look at the, so from my view in the hotels, crazy scenes. Loads of people would want to come here as recruiters, but I'm assuming that if you don't have an Arabic language, chances are you're not going to be able to work in the government sector, I assume, and you're going to be basically focusing on the private sector. That's basically where you can do your trade as a recruiter. You're not going to really be compatible in the public sector simply because your command of the Arabic isn't there. Let's dive deeper. I don't know anything about Arabic other than the fact there are many versions of Arabic, and we shouldn't be walking around saying, okay, Arabic is one thing. How, would someone, for instance, coming in from Lebanon be able to go in and to work public sector here? Is the language sort of translatable enough to work as a good public sector recruiter here?
It's not that easy. I'll jump in here, Zahia. I remember 24 years back when I joined the organization in Kuwait. I speak fluent Arabic. My mom is Lebanese, and I didn't understand one word. They were talking to me Kuwaiti Arabic, and I speak fluent Arabic, and I couldn't answer. So it took a long time until you understand the accent. The terminologies are used differently in each region. But now I think with all the technology, the media, people are more acquainted with the different accents across the region. So it's yeah, if it's not only because you speak Arabic, you can go around in the Gulf region and understand what they are saying.
Is there one, Miriam, is there one, because I've always been very interested in it, is there one regional form of Arabic that is most widely spoken? Because I know there's Saudi, there's Jordanian, there's Lebanese, there's UAE. What's the one?
Before, the Egyptian one was more the common one because of the TV. It's like Egyptian was like the Bollywood, Hollywood for the region.
Right.
So it was the easiest to understand. So they can understand me very well if I speak Egyptian, but not vice versa. And I had lots of funny examples when I went to Kuwait. I mean, they kept telling me this gentleman, his dad passed away, and Sida signed his documents. Sida booked the ticket for him. Sida. So it's like, wow, Sida is a very nice manager. And I discovered Sida means quick.
Oh.
And never heard about it before. It's just very common in the Gulf region. Sida means quick, but it's not common across other Arab countries.
Well, that's my Arabic word of the day. Thank you, Miriam. I like one a day. Thank you.
What about the written level? Is it like, for instance, again, I'm thinking of maybe some Arabic speaking recruiter living in the UK, let's say, but doesn't really understand the written side at a sufficient level. Like, would that person be good in public sector, or is it actually no? Like, for instance, is the email written in Arabic rather than English? How does that work on written communication, folks?
Can I take this, Mariam?
Yes.
So while in dialects there is several way of speaking Arabic, Jordanian, Lebanese, Egyptian, and in the Gulf themselves there is different way of saying things. Even in the UAE, there is some people speaking different than others, although they are both from the UAE. But when you are writing Arabic, there is one way to write Arabic. Yet there is some Shakespearean language, like the one that Matt used to use, where not a lot of people are using it. But when you want to write in Arabic, it is one way to write on Arabic. Although you are speaking it in different ways with your dialect, but you are writing it in one way, almost.
I see. This is actually very similar to how Chinese works, where you have basically a single script across multiple languages that don't are mutually intelligible, but that you can communicate by writing it down, even if two people cannot verbalize it. So I guess written Arabic may be a very good gateway for you. Okay, super interesting, everybody. Javid, I want to go back to you on the percentages you mentioned. What is the objectives? Like, what's the government KPIs on Emiratization? Can you give us some detail on this so that people can understand what the requirement is?
Absolutely, and I think this all started post-pandemic, and I think the decree from the government was that every private sector who has a certain amount of people in their organization, and they went actual numbers in terms of the skilled labor that they have in their organization, and they said you got to be 2% of that, right? And they started with about 50 plus employees, and then 100 plus employees, then they came back to 50 plus employees as the skilled labor, and 2% of that should be the Emiratization target. And you grow incrementally 2% and 2% year on year. Now, if you don't, then you get fines, you get blocked by most of the system, you can't do business, you can't apply for expat visas and so on and so forth. But pretty much they said grow incrementally by 2%. We don't want to go back and tell you to grow like 50%, 60% like what Saudi did. But 2% is what UAE came back with, and an incrementally 2% growth for every 100 employees or 50 employees that you have. They still haven't, and we are kind of ecosystem in a way, free zone, mainland, and so on and so forth, technical terms, but they haven't still gone back to the free zone yet to say Emiratization becomes a thing for you. They're still focusing on mainland and the public sector to go back and do this, or even DIFC. But that's where the government came back and said 2% year on year is what it is. Now, the tricky part is some of us got very excited and we went to 10% in our first year, but it wasn't counted. They said 2%, 2%, 2%. So whatever we did extra wasn't counted. You just said 2%, 2%, 2% is what we want you to do. Don't get extra smart with us, right? So that's how we are operating right now.
So I can understand this is an old recruitment trick. We need to be sandbagging almost. Do you talk about this in you say, you don't overly do it, because then obviously you don't actually get rewarded for this. You want to throttle it. And by the way, folks, whenever you do a KPI, whoever applies it, there's always going to be kind of unexpected consequences of this. So we have to factor this in mind. Every single sort of target is can produce positive effects, but also produce negative ones as well. So I guess in your case, you went to 10%, and then actually next year you had to continue to increase by to create more straw for your back. Very difficult.
They did reward. They did reward us. They gave us the award in the first year for embryotization. KPMG won all the awards. But they said, you know what, Javed, you still got to do another 2%. Like, okay, we'll continue going there. But yes, that's how it is. Absolutely.
Do you know what? There's just as a quick aside, folks. There's another thing that I'm going to talk about this in RO100 tomorrow, but it's a very consistent thing for businesses generally not to recognize overachievement, and it's a real problem sometimes, because you can end up penalizing a function that has done exceptionally well simply because you just think you've mismeasured or mistargeted in the first place, and you then go and apply the same thing. So one of the things I want to talk about tomorrow is productivity, for instance. How do we get more productive? How do we become more efficient? All this type of stuff, etc., etc. You know what? The business is going to expect you to do that year on year. There's not going to be a situation where it says, "Oh, well done, guys. You've just become efficient." Pat on your back. Next year they're going to give you another thing and then keep you going. So probably TA as a function needs to have a strong negotiation position on this, to understand that if we over deliver, we actually need to try and retrieve some of that productivity back so that we can recycle it in a more efficient way, rather than constantly break our backs to try and hit targets that might be unsuperable. Anyway, I'll explain that a bit more in clear points hopefully tomorrow. Okay. Let's talk about population. I'm just thinking, okay, there's this demand. There's already a talent shortfall, 1.8 million people. What is the demographics telling us? Is there a situation where we might actually be running out of talent? In which case, what do we do? Is the government aware of this, for instance? And is there any flexibility or any thoughts going forward in the future as to how this might work out? Anybody, any thoughts on that side of things?
Can I take this, Matt?
Go ahead, Zahia.
I was going to say that.
I just want to comment. I think me and Matt are coming from the same sector. Yeah. While Javid is fighting to get his 10%, we are fighting to get our 45%.
Yes.
So by 2026, we need to reach to 45%. And yes, sometimes we are faced with talent scarcity. We cannot find the right talent for the right position, especially when the position is emeritized. There is so many strategies that we are following, and we talked about it a long time ago, me and Matt, which is upskilling. So we have our good people, and we start working on them, and we start upskilling them. But effort is not only at our side. Also, the government is making a huge effort to upskill, help us to take and certify those new graduates without us paying anything to the government. We need just to hire them. To make them ready for a certain specialized roles, especially when it comes to risk and compliance. So yes, we are faced with some talent issue when it comes to emeritization, but we are working around it by upskilling. And the new generation is great generation. They are open-minded, they are willing to learn, they are looking forward. There is so many beautiful things in this new generation, which you can just capitalize in, just hire the right attitude, we call it, and then you start upskilling them if they have the appetite for that.
Yeah, and that, by the way, is actually a really interesting counterpoint to skills-based hiring. I don't know whether Matt's got a thought on this, because sometimes if you're hiring and then you're hiring for the raw potential hiring for the attitude, the willingness to go and learn, then the L&D side might actually then fill in all of the things that you need. You don't necessarily need to hire for the, established skills that this person has learned in a previous job. So it's really interesting how we balance that. Like, are we actually looking for attitude rather than skills, for instance? And if so, how do we measure that? Like, what's the assessment procedure? Let's move on to that side of things, folks. Is there anything that is interesting or about how people like to be assessed here? Like, for instance, do we do a CV screen, then a telephone interview? Is it a Zoom call? Do we do face-to-face interviews? What's the attitude to people doing tests and stuff? Is it assessment centers? Typically, how does it work when we come down to, okay, this person's interested, but we've got to figure out whether they're a good fit? Anybody want to step into this?
I'd say the market's getting better with the tech and how it uses it, Hung. So, for example, video interviews are pretty commonplace now. So a lot of the big corporates run those, regardless of industry. I think there's a push towards more and more fact-based HR, which means more and more psychometrics are being run. So you've got better data, richer conversations with the hiring managers to have. The market's very much driven by relationships. So I think a lot of organizations, whilst there's still, so many international people coming in, so there's a lot of remote interviews as you're speaking to people, in Asia or in Europe, or where have you. Locally, I think most recruiters and the most effective recruiters still do a lot of their work face to face. Makes a difference. But I think for a long time the market suffered with what I thought was a path of least resistance hiring system. Somebody knows somebody, they think they're quite good, they bring them in, and just a lack of objectivity and just accept the market demographics, which is frankly, certainly within banking and financial services, it is mostly expat male. It's 75% men, and a big chunk of those are not UAE nationals. So I think with the drive to disrupt that a little bit more, get better balance in the market, there's been an increased use of more and more sophisticated assessment methods. But I think there's still some way to go, both in terms of the assessment and the sourcing itself. So going back to the question about sort of the supply of talent, if we move away from just the UAE nationals, it's an interesting market where good UAE nationals absolutely in high demand, have options. Probably an oversupply of talent at the moment, even to the point in certain sectors there's probably some wage deflation despite a big increase in the cost of living. Looking to come in here from overseas, as perhaps more developed economies struggle a bit more than they have done historically. Locally, there's some fantastic talent, even within the expat community. So certainly thinking about the region beyond the GCC, so sort of Levant countries, there's some brilliant talent here that doesn't always hit the surface. You have to get out into the market, get to know it, get to meet it, to put it through an assessment. I think there's a few communities that's perhaps still a little bit undiscovered because they don't have those flagship brands, within banking, such as I don't know, one of the big global mega banks, but they've got fantastic capability, great competencies, and that's where the assessment really adds value. In that, the psychometric, I think in particular, can really help surface them, where you can sit down with a hiring manager, say, yes, I know this person hasn't necessarily worked for an international organization, or they're not from an Ivy school, but look at the behaviors, and they have X, Y, and Z in abundance, and that's really going to help us. Maybe not necessary, but they speak Arabic, they can kind of read the air out here. It's extremely helpful.
Would you say psychometrics is generally accepted by candidates? So they're cool with it. It's not like something that they can think what the heck this is, or they have a rejection to it and so on. It's generally okay to do. Cool. Very interesting. I've got to talk about sort of sourcing, like where people might be in sort of the Anglophone world, Western world. It's like so dominated by LinkedIn. It's like there's one platform which basically rules it all. I don't know whether anybody was aware of this, but there was some sort of bug yesterday which caused everyone to lose like thousands of connections. Everyone's up in arms. It was like, oh my God. For me, it kind of looked like, okay, we're panicking because we're so dependent on this. And is it the same way in the region here, for instance, that we're very dependent on LinkedIn as the tool, or are there other tools? Where do we post jobs? Where do we search for candidates? What are your thoughts on this?
So I think LinkedIn definitely is primary gateway to crawling our jobs into the market right now, Hung. And I think most of the recruiters spend a lot of time on LinkedIn as a primary source of finding candidates. But are they diversifying? Yes. Again, the amount of recruiting that we do in blue collar, white collar, the industries differ. So there are people who also go to job boards like Indeed and Byte.com and so on and so forth. And so, but LinkedIn primarily becomes professional services, financial services, banking, and so on and so forth. But when you start going down the line of the blue collar worker, then it differs manufacturing and so on and so forth. But yes, primarily that is it. Yes, when I saw Adam's post that he lost a couple of thousand and he lost US, I went to quickly to my followers and I checked how many did I lose. Luckily, I didn't lose any, and I think it was more a European bug than a Middle Eastern bug. But primarily, I think LinkedIn is the way to put your content out, tell what your organization is doing, talk about your EVP, and say what the jobs are happening. So that's still primary, but there are some tools disrupting that right now.
Okay, cool. So again, that seems to be fairly analogous elsewhere. LinkedIn for a kind of knowledge worker, professional services, that type of area, and then not very strong at all on non-knowledge work, so blue collar work, retail work, all that type of stuff. That's no bueno. We've got to find other sources for that. Where are those other sources for the blue collar workers? What is the pathway if I'm ended up recruiting for, I don't know, a restaurant or construction business or whatnot? What is the process to recruit those people?
Usually we go to the SOW. There are companies in the region very good and known that we go for them for the blue collar specifically, and not through a tool. It doesn't. I mean, not like LinkedIn, Bait, or something. Usually, there is a few names within the region that they do the mass hiring for the blue collars.
Yeah, agency work up. Yeah.
Okay, so Miriam, basically there are recruitment agencies or there are third-party suppliers that generally dominate the blue collar sort of recruitment. The TA side is generally professional services. Blue collar is separate. That's really, again, another interesting thing. I didn't know how that would operate in this space. Very, very interesting. Okay, folks, just a quick break. I've seen a few people in the chat already do what we should always do in the middle of every show, sharing their LinkedIn connections into the chat stream. The reason why, folks, is because Brainfood Live is a conversation starting show. We want to make sure that we're not a bottleneck for a conversation that should go on, even though we have to come off air. And of course, we will have to come off air, not least because Matt is going to buy his lunch. So we need to get to that. He's actually gone blank just as I said that. I wonder whether he's taking the opportunity to bail out on
this problem. On the video as well.
Don't wait for him. Exactly. I'm trying.
That's it. No, but folks, grab your LinkedIn URL, stick it in the chat stream. If you're watching this on Crowdcast, make sure you then connect with everyone who's doing the same. If you're watching this on any of the LinkedIns that we're broadcasting this on, do the same thing on the comment thread there and just make sure you then connect with everyone else who's done the same also. Worst case scenario, you walk away from this conversation with 5, 10, 15, 20 new connections that care about hiring in the Gulf states and beyond. Why not have better connections? Again, that's going to be one of the points I'm going to make in my talk tomorrow. It's very important that we have become super networked in this era where AI is going to basically dominate a lot of the other forms of information processing. We need to tap into other ways in which we can get intelligence, and that's through collective intelligence via the community. So make sure you do that. I think Matt has actually gone, probably accidentally, but he may well decide to just bounce. I don't know. But let me.
You're asking a banker to buy you lunch, so I think he's just going to withdraw some cash right now.
I bet he complains about technical difficulties now. Folks, I see some questions on the Q&A as well. We're going to get to them in a second. I forgot to mention this. Andre, thanks for putting questions in there. Make sure you put your questions in the Q&A section at the right-hand side of the screen. We're going to get to them in about 5 minutes, and we're just going to knock out these questions for you. So make sure you do that. Okay. Whilst Matt's sort of coming back on, let's talk about the tech technology-wise? What are we using here, let's say, for ATSs? Are there, where are we with AI? Like, what's the scenario for big corporations, private and public sector here in the region? Any thoughts on this?
I'll take that. I think in the last couple of months, I've been dedicating myself to teach recruiters on how to use AI. I think that's been one of my mission statements these days. But anyway, so most popular ATSs is Oracle, Workdays. You've got the success factors in the large organizations. There are quite a few mid players coming into the market, like the PeopleStrongs, the Zincs, and so on and so forth. So there is variety of ATSs being used in the market right now. I think people are still using GPT for their emails and their content on LinkedIn. I don't think they have started to understand the power of the LLMs yet in terms of what it is. But I think, is the region open? Yes, I see a lot of hunger in recruiters to get much more productive rather than just throwing 20 resumes at the hiring manager. They want to do insight-based sourcing rather than just putting some Boolean search on LinkedIn and pulling out a few searches from there. So there is hunger. Is the market getting disrupted already? I think everybody's in that wait and watch mode in terms of let's see where this AI is taking, because there are too many options coming out every day. But my only request is I think you got to start soon. It's already here. The whole change has already come in. So that's a couple of things from my. If you want to deep down into something, I would be more than happy to do that.
No, really, really good. Really interesting to get Javid's observations there. I think this question probably we want to expand to other people as well, just given the fact everyone's from different perspectives. Any other thoughts as from the other panelists as to where you think technology implementation, AI implementation is for companies and public sector here in the region?
I think the appetite to get more AI-powered recruitment system, ATS tools, is, as Javid said, across all sectors, it is becoming bigger and bigger. And now we are all noticing that the ATS that we used to use 2-3 years ago, it's not anymore like the same what we are using now. It is more sophisticated now. With entry of this is a video interviewing, which is assessing the body language of the candidate, and would analyze the body language. It will give you how much they are suiting the position you are interviewing for. With resume screening, with the interview scheduling, I think yes, as Javid said, across sectors the appetite is big, and we are using it more and more. If we don't use it, we will be out of the market. Matt, you are
You're
on
on
mute,
mute.
I think.
We can't hear you. Matt, we can't hear you.
I think you got to refresh.
Yeah, refresh the browser. That's the way. Okay. Let's talk about sort of how we interview candidates. Typically, that's a Zoom thing, right? Are we? I would assume that's the primary thing. So I see a CV, candidate comes in, let's get on a call. Is the phone still the thing that we do first? It is, because different cultures operate differently. Do candidates like the phone, or is it okay? Let's do a video call. I get nods and shakes on this. It's very interesting to see what's the dispute. Miriam, why are you shaking your head? Javid, why are you nodding your head? Let's answer these two questions. Miriam first.
I am very insisting on having a Teams call now, not a phone call anymore. Even I call on the phone call to take a team call, because I mean, seeing the candidate on video and looking to their face expressions, the way they present themselves, it makes a big difference. Sometimes if a candidate I screen or I interview through the phone and they talk very well, however, when I go on the and then I ask for a video or a meeting, sometimes it doesn't fit the culture of the organization. Not on the look, I'm not talking about the look here, I'm talking about how the candidate is presenting himself, his body language, and so on. So I think we're not doing phone calls anymore. That's from my side. I don't know about the colleagues, because your videos like saying, yes, I'm doing telephone calls.
No, we do. I mean, the attitude, the behaviors, I think is a filter that I need to come to at a different level. For me, it's very skill-based hiring, and I really want to push my recruiters to look at the skills and the right things. So the phone screening is a thing, and I think we're not that way different from the rest of the world. I think the application comes in, we do a little bit of a shortlist, and then we go to the phone screening. Then we do a little bit of an assessment if it is a junior to a mid-level profile, or go to the first and the second level of interview, and then a final level of interview has to be face to face. So I'm really not hung up, or the industry is really not hung up on a Teams or a Zoom call. Whatever ways of communication works. We even tried talk to AI. I mean, it worked beautifully. They are very happy to do something on the AI side of things as well. So there is a good openness that I see. We're not boxing ourselves to a technology to say, oh, you got to do a Google Meet or a Teams or a Zoom. We are open to anything that comes through, whatever comfort the candidate. Candidates is driving. We do a lovely phone call with them because we just need to get to them at the right point so that we can keep moving the life cycle of the recruiting.
Yeah. Okay. Really interesting. Moving beyond that first screen, let's say we're interested, they're interested, we bring them in for an interview face to face. I assume that's quite common given the size of the area, right? So I'm again, a certain like mega continental sized countries, different scenario. You can't always bring people in, but I'm assuming people can generally come into an office to do a face-to-face interview. How should recruiters approach this if they're coming again new to the area? They've got a job with a bank here, for instance. They're interviewing someone who's lived here for a long while. Are there anything that we need to be aware of as to how questions are asked, how people are responding, etc., stuff like this? Any cultural nuances that people should be aware of if you're interviewing local people here?
Okay, I'll add. I'll start with few points, and maybe Zahia can jump in here. Her expertise in immunization is bigger. So basically, there is that you have to have the culture acceptance and understand before you come in. Sometimes people don't like to shake hand if different gender. I know it's old school, but it is still in the region. So you never put your hand forward. You wait until the candidate do that. So or the recruiter or the
hiring manager.
Yes, so this is something to watch for. Of course, which I learned here in the region. When you sit, if you put one leg on the others, they don't take it very well out of respect and culture. Usually, this is not something very acceptable, specifically in front of a lady. There's lots of few tricks for someone who's coming from abroad to do interview here. So these are the examples.
I had no idea about the leg crossing, but again, this is like super interesting stuff. Someone from the outside is not going to know, and they may be inadvertently causing bad employer branding issue or whatever it is,
No,
simply because they don't know, right?
they don't know. They just don't know. Zahia, you want to add
I
here?
think I can't agree more, Mariam. The only thing that I want to add is the context that you are in. So if you are in an international organization with a lot of diversified population, it's different than when you are in an organization with a certain nationality there. You need to understand what is the dynamics and what is the background. UAE is a very open country. It is very welcoming country, and they are accepting everything. But like what Mariam said, like shaking hand is one thing between different genders. One thing I will add, because sometimes now the video interviewing or the Teams interview is very popular. What we saw that sometimes some of the females are not so comfortable opening the video. So that's why we are calling them for face-to-face interview. It is more acceptable for them. And this is only for Emirati candidates. For others, no, this is normal. But again, you need just to take the context and the background of the organization you are applying.
That's interesting on the Zoom, the gender variance on Zooms are here. Actually, I think that's probably there's local nuance here, but there is evidence to say, sort of outside of the UAE, that women generally have are more likely to have camera off on Zoom calls than men are. And we don't quite know why. I think we can speculate, but probably it'll be something to do with the fact that, you know, women typically get judged more on appearance, for instance. There's a lot more connotation in terms of a woman's appearance than there is for a man. And so it becomes more of a complex issue. It's actually a really interesting diversity and inclusion conversation that needs to be had in different areas of the world, because I, again, you know, I'm similar to you, Miriam. I like to have the Zoom. I really have a problem with phone calls, actually, which is strange as a recruiter, right? But I don't like it simply because I'm only getting like only one bit of information. I want to see body language, micro expressions, all those things. I'm much more comfortable. But then I have to be aware that actually lots of people have different sort of feelings on that, and we have to be we can't necessarily subject our own sort of preferences into that flow. Folks, we have to go to questions because we are running really low on time. Let's go straight to them. In this case, I'm just going to go through them one by one. If you have any questions, folks, just stick them in now. Otherwise, we're going to miss it. This is Andre Dos Santos. Let's start with this. For someone interested in relocating to the region, what steps to follow? Recommendations, timing. I love Andre's directness. Andre needs a job. By the way, he's a great recruiter. If you don't know Andre Dos Santos, he's a hero in the Iberian Peninsula. Portuguese, Spanish, everything. He's a legend. Get hold of him if you can. Okay. What are the steps? Someone like Andre, someone he knows, he doesn't know the area. What are the 1, 2, 3 he or she needs to do to get to this area? What's the plan?
Research. No, I said research, Andre. Find your fit. Find your best fit. You want to be an agency recruiter. You want to be an in-house recruiter. You want to work for an RPO. You got to find the right fit rather than just throwing yourself at, oh, I want to apply for this job. That's the first part, because most of us are looking for some kind of a local experience so that the candidates or the recruiters can then, hit the learning curve sooner. So that is definitely something that we as talent acquisition leaders always look. But if you've got some skills that you can bring to the table, which is unique, then look for where those are needed and then apply for those places. I think otherwise, culturally, you'll settle in well. It's very cosmopolitan. We are very open. Language is not going to be an issue. You can speak in any language. I mean, I feel Hindi, which is a common language in India, is the second language in UAE, right? That's how I feel about it. But so there is no issues on settling in, but I think finding your best fit, applying in the right places is going to be the key to your coming over here.
I'm going to also make a presumption that being here locally is going to help. So in other words, just turning up here, and then I think that's very similar. I did this conversation in Bangkok with local recruiters there, and I said, listen, people are looking obviously for some form of commitment, and just being here, if it's a holiday, go and meet some business meetings while you're here, that's going to help, right? So yeah, step number one is that. Okay, so Andre, we might see you this weekend. If you fancy taking a flight, come over, man. Okay, let's move on to the next thing. We've got here Priyanka saying, how do organizations strategize leadership hiring amid localization laws? Most times it takes up to a year to hire local in a leading role. So very interesting. There's emeritization. We talked, I think, initially on emeritization field. It felt to me that we were talking at the entry level, like younger people coming in. Okay, let's talk leadership. We need to hire someone, a senior manager, local Emirati, going to take ages. How do we kind of think about this? Because these jobs can't stay open for that period of time without filling it. What's the typical way in which we deal with senior hiring for local employees here?
Hunga, I challenge that narrative, actually. I don't think it necessarily takes any longer. If anything, it's quicker because the supply is so limited. It's quite easy to ring fence and get a sense of who's actually out there. So if you've invested a little bit in your TA strategy, you've bought the right market maps, you may be partnering with third parties, you may be doing it in-house, you've built your talent communities, you can whittle through who's available and who isn't quite quickly. If you don't know that, if you haven't done your data and your research, then you can go running around the forest for an animal that may or may not exist. And that's why some of these roles really, really drag. But I think if you ring fence the talent first, have a good view on, is it available, yes or no? Is the availability likely or unlikely? And then you can make those decisions in terms of, look, do we localize this role and bring in an Emirati, or do we go beyond that and start to bring in expat talent?
Yeah, really good, Matt. So you're saying essentially we need to do workforce succession planning, we need to do market mapping. If you have all of that in place, then that obviously is going to give you the living resource to do that. By the way, sort of technology is helping with market mapping. I know previously that was just a laborious, thing that individual recruiters have to do, but now AI is really helping with the ability to aggregate a lot of the data and keep tracks on people in real time, etc. I think that's going to help everyone going forward. Okay, Priyanka is going to have another question. Let's do this. How do we as expat TA leaders navigate our own career changes amid sort of a socioeconomic change in UAE? That's interesting for expats. So for instance, I assume that there's also an emiratization pressure on TA. And so, okay, I'm an expat. I'm here in sort of UAE. I want to kind of make sure that I'm still marketable as a professional here. What is the techniques? What are the things that I should be doing?
I think
I'll jump on that one as well, actually, because it feeds back into the first question as well, about getting a career out here. And it is a relationship-driven market. So I think, network. I think if you think strategically about how do you want to position yourself for your next role, even if the job isn't necessarily there, and whether it's internally or externally, if you make the effort to build the connections, build the trust with the leadership that you actually want to work for, that's the key to success out here. And Emirati or expat doesn't really make a difference there. If your boss likes you and your boss's boss likes you, or somebody senior in another organization likes you, good things tend to happen, whether it's formally through structured career or informally just by the way the market pans out.
Yeah, you got to get in amongst it. Zahir, you're also about to come in with a commentary there. Would you like to add your contribution to that answer, please?
Yes, I agree with Matt for sure. But I want just to comment for Priyanka that the demand for recruiters in this region is high, especially for specialized recruiter. When recruiter is specialized in finance or technology or legal. So maybe my advice to Priyanka, rather than being a general recruiter, be specialized in one of the sectors that is growing, like under sustainability, under finance, under technology, under AI, data science. Build your connection there, and then you can present yourself that you are a recruiter that can bring the headcount when it is required.
Yeah, the key word is subject matter expert, whether in
100%.
industry, in a region, just to be an expert in one specific area.
Okay, let's end with that sort of one focus. What are the key sort of demands for specialist recruiters in the UAE? Let's talk about the sectors we care about. Let's talk about different levels of company, etc. What are the best places to operate as a recruitment professional here?
I think every place. I think there's room for everything and every industry. No longer Middle East is an oil and gas sector anymore. Oil and gas is steady and easy. It's still going strong, but the whole changes into the whole environment, the sustainability, the governance aspects of it. Banking is growing, fintech is growing. The government is inviting about 100,000 startups to come and work. I think there is room for everything in this nation. I think there is a role for everybody to play in. If you stay relevant, if you stay upskilled, and if you are a brand by yourself and you are more out there, I think there's room to do everything here.
Yes,
And Hangli, maybe if we pay attention just to what the government is looking for. So if you see the strategy for the government for 2050, they want to be the UAE national AI center. Dubai want to be the global financial center. They are growing this sector. The energy, renewable, the sustainability. If people just see what the government is investing in, then they can understand what opportunities are coming.
And I wanted to add that working here, it's really so much fun in this region because you have the world is your limit. Because of the population is limited, as I mentioned, of UAE national. So to hire, you have the whole world to bring over. It's not like you're living, for example, in one country that is full of talent. You don't have to look abroad. But the nice thing here that you can bring people across the oceans and across the world. So it's very interesting.
I think
Yeah,
it's definitely
fantastic.
worth viewers listening or looking at Vision 2033, which is the Dubai vision, and obviously Saudi 2030. Jav, am I right? Is it still 2030?
Yeah, 2030.
It's definitely worth Googling both of those and having a look at them, because that they will give clear ideas of these growth areas that are being concentrated on at the moment.
There's a department got
I'll bring
created
that
by
to
the
life a
ministry.
little bit. I'll bring that to life a little bit in terms of the size and scale of change, because it is an emerging market that will be emerged relatively soon. So GDP is for next year is forecast to be somewhere between 5 and 6%, so well above the global average. Population of Dubai on its own will double from 3.5 million to 7 million by 2033. And probably, most impressively, GDP of the country will double. What's already a big economy will double in size. They'll become AI global mega hub number 3, or that's the ambition behind the US and China by then. Financial services market number 4 globally by 2033. So the runway ahead of us that will see about 250,000 people coming to Dubai on its own, never mind the rest of the region, year on year for the next decade. It's just a remarkable opportunity for all sorts of industries, whether it's tech, sustainability, banking, healthcare. They all growing. And I think what they're doing really well now is it's actually measured growth. The region has a history of sort of peaks and troughs, but actually now that growth is much more measured. It's still a good story. It's still rapid growth by global standards, but it is done in a way by government. It's deliberately engineered so it's sustainable, and it will continue into the future, which gives you a lot of comfort as an expat out here, thinking, well, there's certainly jobs out there for us to grow and develop our careers. And I think that the 5 of us is testament to that.
Fantastic stuff, everybody. And well, let's end it on that note. I really appreciate that we could have another conversation. There's so many more things that we could talk about. And that just sets us nicely up for maybe a round 2 that we'll do. It's actually one of my ambitions in 2025 to continue to do kind of brain food on tour type shows, simply because I think we all get educated about what the local challenges are, local solutions are that potentially you can get inspired from or learn from even wherever you are in the world. So let me take the opportunity here to thank everyone for joining us. So Javeed Khan, wonderful to have your contributions on the show. Great to connect. We'll see you tomorrow. Miriam Dimitriou, thank you for joining us also. Zahir Abu Ali, thank you so much for joining also. Matt, wonderful to see you. Thanks for joining. And we're all going to be at RO100, I believe, tomorrow. So if you're also going to be there, make sure you come up and say hello to all of these wonderful folks. And if not, make sure you connect with them on LinkedIn. I've checked all their sort of LinkedIns are in the chat stream, which you can review later on. So make sure you go and connect with them as well. Okay, let's say goodbye to all of our friends here. Javeed, Miriam, Zahir, and Matt. And that will be it for that. Okay, so thanks for watching, everybody. We'll be back next week. Actually, no, we'll be back on Friday. Guess what? Because I'm doing another Brainfood Live this Friday from Dubai. And we're going to be doing a different show. It's going to be how you diversify your talent pipeline using employee referrals. Now, employee referrals have often been considered to be, hey, it's great to hire people that you know, but is that just another way of homogenizing your workforce? We don't want to do that. We want to diversify the workforce. Well, is there actually a way to do both? That's the question we're going to be asking on Friday. We're going to be doing it on 2 p.m. BST. So is it still BST? It's probably GMT by now. So UK time, it's 9 o'clock. Here in Dubai, but basically it'll be 2 p.m. in the UK. So make sure you sign up for that. Follow the channel if you're interested in more information on that as well. Okay, that's about it. We'll see you later. Thanks for watching.
Thank you. Bye.
How was that, Charlotte? I thought that was all right, wasn't it?
Yes, I thought it was absolutely good. Are we definitely offline?
No, we're not, but that's all right. I've got to fiddle with a few knobs here, but that's fine. I thought that was so interesting, though. So interesting.
Really interesting, and such a great, diverse bunch of people, but all giants in their industries. So yeah, really interesting. It was really interesting when Zahir was nodding. No, Miriam was nodding, and Jav was shaking his head, and I was like, oh, perfect content. But yeah, great, and I'm sure that those conversations will carry on tomorrow as well. when you get to speak.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And it's great to have people with different views, as you mentioned. Yes. How about you, Charlotte? How did you enjoy coming on to Brainfood Live and doing your debut as a? Is that okay?
I loved it. I'm a musician, so I've normally got a guitar in my hand and I feel a bit more comfortable. But no, I was quite happy with that. It was great. And
very,
great
very,
you're
very natural on air. You're very natural on air, Charlotte. So that's good stuff.
Well, I'm glad.
Okay.
Fantastic.
Listen,
well,
I'll let you go.
At lunch at some point. I'll send you the link of where we're going. And probably a bit later.
All right. I'll see you later, Charlotte. Thanks for joining.
Bye. Bye.